from the studios of TLC Talk Radio.
And Dana's bedroom.
It's DT on our minds. I'm your girl, Tasha.
And I'm that fat girl, Dana.
Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And catch us every day on tlctalkradio.com, 24/7 edutainment. Hey, friend.
Hey, friend.
How are you?
I had a day, but I'm better now.
You think you're going to skate past that? Tell us about the day.
Well, so when I went to work, I fell on some ice and laid in the parking lot for a minute or two.
Like, I'm the faller in the duo. That's what I do. It can't be both of us.
Yeah. But then I went in and realized I didn't have a mask on. And then my ID wouldn't scan. I went back out to my car, got my mask, and realized I forgot my water, picked that up, and it was all over the back seat of my car. So it's been a day. Right. Oh, then I locked myself out of school from a different door, and I had to walk all the way around.
So it's one of those do-over days, huh?
Yeah. That was all before breakfast.
Oh my Lord Jesus. Okay, well, I'm glad you made it to the shoot safely. Yeah. All I did was get my dose 1 of the COVID vaccine, which I wasn't going to do at first. I just didn't know how I felt about it. Mm-hmm. But I talked to some friends who are in the medical profession, and I was like, all right, talk to me. And so they were like, you'll be fine. And I was. My parents have had both doses. They're fine.
Oh, okay. My mom's had her first dose.
Okay, yeah.
I'm still a no.
Understood. Like, everybody has to do what works best for them. Right. So, I'm cool with that. So on today's show, about more than 20 episodes ago, so don't make me count which episode it was, we had our friend Aja on, and she's a wife, a mom, an entrepreneur, and a gardener. And her love of gardening caused quite the stir in Gary, Indiana. So she is here with us today. Aja, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. So Ace was on in 2019.
Yeah. And yeah. Mm-hmm. Which means we need to record more frequently, but that's a different conversation. Life happens, right? Yeah, definitely. So you are a lover of nature and earth. You said that gardening is your art.
Yes.
And you have a great picture on your Facebook cover page that says gardener, one who creates the quality of life to which they're entitled. This is something you started as a youngster, right? With the help of your family?
Yes, my parents grew food. But of course, when you get to high school, you're like, I don't want to do that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But I got back to it as an adult. I really got back into it when I lived overseas and came back to the United States, and I saw people where I was living in Venezuela. People were eating straight from the farms, and it was just so fresh, and it just felt so good to eat that type of food. And so I knew that I wanted to get back to the land. And then we were looking for a house, my husband and I. We decided that we were going to buy a house in Gary, Indiana. Mm-hmm. We a house that had been sitting for 20 years vacant. And of course, if we're moving from Illinois to Gary, Indiana, there's a reason. The reason is economics. So we decided that we wanted to downsize and live more sustainably and grow food from the garden and try to make our home as sustainable and eco-friendly as possible. Which is difficult to do because this house was built in 1921. So this home is years old this year. So that's a little bit difficult to do. So we started with the garden. And in the meantime, prior to that, we lost our daughter, Yamina, and gardening became my therapy. Yeah. That was a way for me to release. It was a way for me to just be in touch with nature, be in touch with the cycle of life, which includes death. So it was a healing experience for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this therapy created a stir. Tell us about that.
These mugs.
Listen, when you start the story with these mugs, oh, it's about to get real.
Last time we spoke, I was in the middle of a case.
Mm-hmm.
So because I was in the middle of a case, I couldn't say as much as I probably wanted to say, although
Sure.
you and each other for 30 years now or something.
Yep.
But I couldn't say the things that I probably wanted to say because we were in the middle of a case and I knew that this was a public show.
Sure.
So we got a citation in 2000. Okay, so we bought this house. We couldn't move into this house because it was not habitable. So it took us a while to get it habitable. We closed on the house in 2016. We did not move in until January of 2019. So that's a long time.
Yeah.
So in 2018, I'm trying to make sure I'm getting my years right. In 2018, I got my first citation because the way that I garden is it's called regenerative agriculture. So I build soil. It's really like growing soil. You start with, the city of Gary is built on sand. It's very different from Chicago soil. And so in order to really produce nutritious food, you have to build this soil up so that the plants will be able to uptake the nutrition from the soil. And so you have to add wood chips and leaves and compost, a whole bunch of organic material in order to do that.
Yes.
And so we got a citation from the city because I got some wood chips dumped. And I went to court and the judge was like, look, why is this woman here? Even, I went to court a few times and then eventually she was like, look, why is this woman here? The city of Gary does not have any ordinance against wood chips. Just make sure you keep the wood chips off the sidewalks. Boom. I was like, great. I hope I never see this lady again. 2019, we received another citation after I thought this was over. Now I'm trying not to move because I know I'm going in and out.
Okay.
So I'm really trying, but it's not working. But so 2019, thought it was over. We got another citation in, I want to say March or February of 2019. Now the first citation came from the city. It was the Department of, I don't know if it was sanitation. It was the code enforcement. So it was the
good old code enforcement.
Code enforcement, understandable. Because what happens is, and I've talked to friends who own property in other places that are similar to Gary. What happens is if you buy a property in a place that is so blighted, they look at the people who are buying these properties as people who may have money to pay the city in fines.
Got it.
That's one of the ways that these cities make money. So the first thing got thrown out, the code enforcer, fine. My husband even got into it with the code enforcer because he was just like, the wood chips are too high. And my husband was like, well, how high is too high? He was just like, they're just too high. But anyway, like I said, the judge threw it out. 2019, we got another citation. But this time the citation went through the Department of Green Urbanism. They've changed their name. They changed their name in media several times during my case. So yes, Green Urbanism, Department of Green Urbanism, Brenda Scott Henry. Yeah, I'm saying that.
We naming names.
But anyway, I got a citation and it went through them for some strange reason. And so I was like, okay, cool. Because, I'm so naive. I'm like, okay, Department of Green Urbanism, they should understand regenerative agriculture. So it's going to be thrown out. No, it wasn't, because they didn't expect me to fight the case. They expected me to come in and just have a regular lawn and live like everybody else. But why exactly would we move to Gary to have a lawn if we came here to grow food and live a different lifestyle? We could have lived like that in Homewood. You know, we could have just had our lawn and lived the regular old suburban life in Homewood, Illinois. But we came here for a different reason.
Right.
So we got the citation. And again, I thought it was going to be thrown out. But okay, tell me if I'm talking too much too, because I'm starting to remember stuff.
No, you're fine. You're catching us up because these are things you couldn't share before.
Right. Okay, so when I got the citation, it just so happened that it was a city council meeting maybe that week or the week after I got the citation. So I went to the city council meeting and I talked to the mayor, who was Mayor Karen Freeman Wilson. She's not the mayor anymore, but she was the mayor at that time. And I pulled her to the side and I was like, Mayor Wilson, Freeman Wilson, I got the citation. I know, you can't do that in every place, but Gary's a small town.
Sure.
So I pulled her to the side and I was like, I got the citation for a garden. The mayor was like, what? She looked at my citation. She looked at the paperwork. She was like, girl, you live right down the street from me. Why would you get a citation for this? She called Brenda Scott Henry over, who was also at the meeting. She said, Brenda, handle this. And then the mayor looked at me and she said, Aja, if this is not handled, come see me in my office. I said, okay, fine. So I went and was not handled. It was not handled. I called the lady's office. I called Brenda Scott Henry's office, Department of Green Urbanism, or whatever they're calling themselves these days. And it was not handled. So I went to the mayor's office.
Wait, it wasn't handled because they wouldn't respond, or they just said, we don't care what the mayor says? What was when you tried to get it handled, how did they respond, or did they just not respond?
I tried to get in touch with her. She didn't respond. I talked to the secretary. I never got a phone call back. I went to the mayor's office because that's what she told me to do. The mayor couldn't see me at that time because she's a mayor of a city. She ain't got time to be running up and down the garden. So I talked to her receptionist, and the receptionist called Brenda Scott Henry on the phone. And Brenda Scott Henry came over and she talked, and she was like, there's nothing I could do about it. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? The mayor just told me to handle this, and you're going to tell me it's nothing you could do about it? It's nothing I can do about it. It's already gone to courts or whatever, so you just have to go to court to fight it. I was like, okay, cool. So in the meantime, a friend of mine who is a farmer in Indiana, I told her what was going on. She was like, look, call these people, and they are the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund.
Yep.
And she was like, join them. I called them. I called them when I went to court. The first time I went to court for the citation. So this was after I'd gone to the mayor's office or whatever. I went to court for the citation. I called the mayor. And this is an emotional thing for me because, again, this is not just a garden for me. This is like I'm grieving. I'm going through all of this. So I called the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund crying. I was like, I just got out of court and blah, blah, blah. And so they were just like, calm down, calm down. And then they called me back and they were like, look, we don't usually take a case like this because you're a new member. So I joined the organization. They were like, you're a new member. We don't usually take a case like this, but because you are in regenerative agriculture, and of course this is a topic that's trending in farm. So they were like, because you are in regenerative agriculture and this is going to set precedent for regenerative agriculture, we're going to take this case. So they sent their attorney out from California and we fought the case and we ended up winning the case. And in the meantime, it was just like, it was so much talk going around the city because the Department of Green Urbanism, the department that had giving me the citation had already received like huge grants, $250,000 grants from the USDA for exactly the same thing I was doing.
Right. That was the key. I remember that. I remember that somebody was showing up at your place, parked in front of your house, watching you.
Yes, I forgot that.
Because I was on here ready to ride to Gary, but that's inappropriate. So
all about that.
Yeah. So my position at the time was, this sounds like something fishy, some undercurrent of fishiness is happening. Although, I didn't know I don't live there. I don't know, but something was up for sure. So the attorney came from California, which, by the way, is hilarious because I promise you, nobody in whatever department this is, it keeps changing its name. I bet you they didn't expect any of this.
No. Tasha, let me tell you, when she got to court, the judge was like, "Oh, this is fancy paper." We're like, like, oh my God. You're like, this is fancy paper.
I can't really.
It's got a watermark.
Wow. So we're here for my case, ma'am. If you could talk about, your love of fancy paper at a different time. So past the fancy paper, what did your attorney argue?
So we argued, when she got there, and initially, okay, now I did not mention that one of the neighbors complained about the wood chips.
Okay.
Fine. That's understandable, because let me tell you, Gary is a city of blight. And so even though this house sat for 20 years, they don't want somebody coming in and just dumping wood chips. I understand that. I understand. I have nothing against the neighbor who complained. I wish you would have come to me first. Mm-hmm. Like some of the other neighbors said, I wish she would have come to you first. Why would she go to the city? Fine, understand it. However, when it gets to the Department of Green Urbanism, you all are supposed to understand this process.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So that was the attorney's fight. She was like, she had to come, and she said, I've never seen anything like this. These people don't know what they're doing. She had to explain what regenerative agriculture was. She had to explain the process that I was doing. It was a very interesting case. And like you said, Tasha, in the meantime, these people are sitting in front of my house stalking us. Yes, we had 2 police reports against, oh my goodness, I want to think of his name right now, but he works in the Department of Green Urbanism. I cannot think of his name. I wish I could.
That's okay. That part isn't as important as when you would report this to the police, like what was their response? Because these are all municipal employees, so they're probably like, huh?
They took the police report the first time. I think I went into the police station and did the report, because this man was sitting in front of our house. Then he came to the porch and started reading. The UPS had a notice on our door. He's reading the notice. I'm like, what are these people doing? And so the second time the police came out, because my attorney had already contacted the city and said, you all need to stop contacting my client, leave them alone. But he continued to come out. And so the police came out, and the police here are pretty cool. Yeah. We'll say that the police are cool. One police officer was like, what is this even about? Like, are they trying to take your property? Like, what are they doing? So they were pretty cool about it.
One of the mottos I live by is that action on your part illuminates the inaction of others. And so here it is. You're trying to build up your space that you've purchased in this city of blight, as you call it. And I get it. And so it seemed like they were like, who does she think she is coming in here doing positive things? That's how it felt to me. Am I right?
I kind of got that feeling because like as the case went on, my attorney said it herself. She was like, this is a case about gentrification. Mm-hmm. She said it. This Gary gentrification right now is quite different from other areas when it comes to, with people coming in. We have a lot of Black folks with more money, perceivably more money than the people here who are coming in and buying property. Mm-hmm. So gentrification here isn't always black and white. At least right now, it is not. And so even the attorney was like, this is a case of gentrification. You're coming in and you're an outsider. You're from Chicago. And who are you to come into their neighborhood and buy property in their neighborhood and do something different than what they're doing? So that was the center of the case. That was one of the centers of the case.
Tell us about the ruling. It's the last day. Whatever happens. What does the closing argument look like, if there was one, and what was the judge's response?
So it was going back and forth between my attorney and the city's attorney, and it really got to a point where my attorney was like, the city's attorney does not want you to go back to court, because if you go back to court, this is going to make the city look bad, because there is no, like, not to mention I live in a neighborhood that's zoned for agriculture. And there
that small detail.
I live and much of Gary is zoned for agriculture. So I live in a neighborhood that's zoned for agriculture. And they knew that because there was so much research from Purdue and other organizations that had given the city money, they had already done tons of research on the value of wood chips in building soil. They knew they didn't have a case. And so it was negotiation between my attorney and the city's attorney. And it just got really silly and annoying toward the end. Like, the guy who was sitting in front of our house, he came in, he went in our backyard to see if wood chips, this is in our backyard, if wood chips were spilling over into another part of our garden. It was just silly at the end. So it was just, the case was thrown out before it went back to court.
Wow. And your attorney fees?
My attorney, everything was paid by the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund. Okay. They worked their butts off for this case, but that's what they do. And in the meantime, we had the community rally behind us. We had Kathy Sipple, my girl Kathy from 219 Green Connect podcast. She got a bunch of people together. We built a retainer wall, just spiced it up a bit. And so it just, and the neighbors, they were knocking on our neighbors' doors, asking them to come against us. And we had neighbors who were like, look, we are not, the neighbor across the street was like, this woman is bringing flowers into the neighborhood. You want me to like come against her? I have an elderly neighbor who lives down the street. And she was like, y'all want me to come against this woman for growing a garden? No, absolutely not. So we did have some neighbors who rallied behind us. So the community really came together on it.
So I think about all of the other things that we could have been doing with municipal money and time and manpower. Mm-hmm.
We're going, I don't know, creating more gardens for more people, maybe.
What Dana said. So I know that this is therapeutic for you and it is your art, as you mentioned. I've seen you. I don't ever have time to come in the rooms, but I see you on Clubhouse. Uh-huh. So what's Clubhouse and what are the rooms that you're hosting or participating in discussions in?
So most of the Clubhouse and rooms that I'm in are focused on cannabis because I'm working on legalization for cannabis in Indiana.
Okay.
I just formed Gary NORML, a chapter of NORML here in Gary, and NORML is the national organization to reform marijuana laws. They've been around since the 1970s. Indiana NORML has been around since 1974. So a lot of my conversation in the Clubhouse is for that. Really, because I think that this city needs cannabis legalization. Too much of Gary's money is going to Illinois for cannabis, and people need cannabis medicine. There's a lot of people who need them, and so that's what I'm fighting for on that end. But also just gardening. I go in there just listen to other gardeners and talk about plants and talk about regenerative agriculture. It's just really a release.
Yeah. And I mean, it's I just couldn't understand then, and I don't understand now, how would one come against this? Like, she didn't say she was in the back making crack, y'all. She said
would it be better if you were making crack? I don't know.
Right, that might be overlooked.
Yeah, but wood chips.
Right. And wood chips, not only wood chips, but we live in the neighborhood is nicer than many of the other neighborhoods in Gary, but we really live across the street from 2 abandoned houses with debris just everywhere. Neighbors are complaining about raccoons and all of this, and you coming after me for this? Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to name any more names because I don't have proof, but from what I've heard and from what I've researched, there were other people behind this whole thing to kind of get me to stop gardening.
And did you ever find out why? I said I smelled a rat. Maybe I smelled a raccoon from across the street, but I smelled a rat. Did you ever find out why, or would it just be speculation?
It would just be speculation at this point. Yeah, it's all speculation, but I have some people in mind, but again, I don't want to say anything because it is just speculation.
Absolutely. I get it. I really appreciate you coming back to update us, because that was one of the stories that had me. Look, our set looked completely different at the time. I remember holding the phone up to talk with you. So yay for progress, but yay for triumph. And so I think that was the takeaway because when you told me, I was like, yes, she won, and common sense prevailed. I was,
back to fight. When we got this made national news. Food covered it. The Chicago Tribune covered it. It was people from DC were talking about, people from Boston were talking. So it made national news and maybe even international, and they did not expect me to fight. But the problem is here. It's still going on. I'm not a target anymore, but I have heard of other cases come up for the same thing, for gardening. And it's absolutely disgraceful, and it should be criminal, especially in a time where people are longing for access to healthy food and longing for the outdoors. We're in the middle of a pandemic. So yeah, I thought it was going to be the end, but it's not. It's probably the end for me, because at this point I may be grandfathered in, but it may not be the end for other people.
Well, I hope that you will keep us posted. I'll definitely keep my ear to the ground, because wow. But we thank you once again for coming to DT on Our Minds from the studios of TLC Talk Radio.
And Dana's bedroom.
DT on Our Minds. Many thanks to our guest, Aja. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media pages: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and catch us every day on TLCTalkRadio.com, 24/7 edutainment. We'll catch you next week.
And remember, she's Tasha, and I'm that fat girl, Dana.
Sometimes y'all know my name. Sometimes, look, put it in the graphic. Next week.